I vividly remember that day from October 2010. We were stationed at the Pomori base camp and we had one of the best vantage points of Mount Everest from there. I remember seeing the sunset that evening on Everest and falling in love with Everest that evening. Even though it was impossible for me to climb Everest at that point, I promised myself that I would come back one day and get to the top of the world. Uh, I also remember distinctly that evening when I entered the dining tent, the place where kind of our entire team met and had food and exchanged stories. Uh, on the right side of that tent, there was this big kind of this area where there were a lot of images of climbers on Everest who had died, who had lost their fingers, who had lost their toes to frostbite. And I was horrified. I asked my expedition leader, Tim, hey Tim, do you really want us to climb this mountain? I mean, what are these pictures? And what Tim told me next has actually guided my mindset for the next many, many years. He told me, Kuntal, death is a reality on Everest. And these photos that you are seeing here, if you make any mistake on Everest, you are possibly going to end up on this wall. And so you really need to train hard and prepare well for your aspiration of climbing Mount Everest. And that is the kind of mindset that guided me for the next many years is that there are no shortcuts and that I really have to train hard and prepare hard before kind of taking on an endeavor like Everest. But little did I know that 5 years later, I was going to be kind of faced with death, like seeing death right in the eye. This is April 2015. I was attempting to climb Everest for the second time. I still remember after a very tough day of climbing, we had a nice night of sleep at Camp 2 on Everest. And the next morning we woke up and I was kind of having my breakfast and just enjoying my time, but it was snowing really hard outside. And my Sherpa Mingma Tenzi, he came inside and he said, Kuntal, we need to really pack up and go down. And I told Mingma, man, please give me some time. I'm so tired, so knackered. It's snowing outside. Just like give me 15 minutes. And he's like, okay, cool. Take your 15 minutes. And believe me, 15 minutes is a lifetime on a mountain like Everest. So I kind of just took it easy and prepared myself, got mentally ready to walk through all that hard snowfall that was happening. We kind of descended and we finally made it to the base camp. And at base camp, it was relatively alright. When the weather is cloudy, it's pretty warm at the base camp. And I got to the base camp and there was this extra thick air and I felt so strong. I felt so great. Our entire team was in the dining tent exchanging pictures and sharing stories, and we were like so all pumped up, enjoying, this entire experience. We were just, life was really good back on the mountain at that point. It was about 11:55 a.m. and the chair that I was sitting on kind of started shaking a little bit. And I'm like, whoa, this doesn't feel like your regular glacier shake. And I was like, telling all my teammates, maybe it's an earthquake. And my teammates were like, you have a case of altitude sickness. And frankly speaking, it could have been the case because on the mountain, sometimes you're thinking something in your head, but probably it's not happening for real. So that's, kind of what I initially thought. But then 5 seconds later, the entire dining tent was shaking. It was like a vigorous shake from the glacier, and we right away knew that we were in the middle of a very big earthquake. So we quickly ran out, and I remember kind of just, standing outside the dining tent and looking around, and all the climbers of all the teams were kind of outside. We were on this massive glacier, like probably a 3-kilometer long glacier. It was almost swaying like a giant swing from one end to the next. And in that moment, I was a little nervous. I was a little anxious. I remember joking with one of my friends that, what if the glacier just opens up like, one of those Hollywood movies? I mean, at the end of the day, it's like a big ice sheet. If it opens up, we could all, kind of get sucked in, and we were a little, kind of scared. But at the same time, I kind of had this feeling of invincibility because, first of all, as a climber, I always feel I'm invincible, like nothing's ever going to happen to me. But at the same time, in the last 75 years, there has been nothing that has happened at the base camp of Everest. So I'm like, I am in the safest place practically possible, given the kind of scheme of things. And so we were standing there. The earthquake went on for almost about 75 to 80 seconds. And then it just kind of stopped, and there was this eerie calm in the, as if it was like pin drop silence. And then we could hear this loud boom as if a big bomb blast had happened somewhere. And in my mind, I knew there's an avalanche coming our way. Because a low cloud had setting at Everest, we couldn't really see any mountains. So we had no clue where this avalanche could potentially be coming from. But we could follow the voice, and the voice of the avalanche, that big boom, was coming from towards the east, that is from the direction of Everest. So I remember the entire base camp, all the people were looking towards Everest, and I was also looking towards Everest. And then suddenly something very unusual happened. All these people in front of me, just in the camp opposite us, they all started running towards Everest. And I'm like, why would someone run towards a danger? It absolutely makes no sense at all. And that's when I quickly realized that probably the danger is just behind us. That's when I turned around and we were faced by this massive cloud. A cloud of snow and ice, boulders and all kinds of debris. And from left of the sky to the right of the sky, the entire sky was filled with this cloud, almost like a tsunami of snow and ice. It was less than 3 seconds away from us. Standing there, in that moment, I did not think that I was going to die. I was actually very certain that I was going to die. As a mountaineer, for many, many years, I have always wondered what it would be like when I would come face to face with my death. And I always used to think I would be terrified. I would be scared. Like, I'm dying. And when I actually came in that situation, like in retrospect, when I think about what happened in 2015, when I was face to face with this giant cloud, which I knew was just going to kill me the next moment, it was so anticlimactic because I did not feel terrified at all. I did not feel scared at all. On the contrary, that emotion of scare just vanished. I actually felt like a deep sadness going through my entire body. I just did not want to die. I wanted to live. I had so many dreams. I wanted to fulfill all those dreams, but I was kind of staring death in its eye. And it was a very kind of a tricky situation. And right now in retrospect, I'm kind of, just almost telling you the entire story in slow motion. But back at that point, it did not happen in slow motion. Everything happened so fast. Within seconds, that cloud hit us, and 3 of us, me, a German mountaineer named Jost Kabush, and a Japanese mountaineer named Taro Yamagata, 3 of us had quickly ran, and we had hidden behind a tent. And kind of I just resigned to the fact that I'm going to die. Typically in an avalanche, you get hit by about 3-4 feet of snow. You almost get buried alive inside that snow. That snow quickly, probably in 15-20 minutes, turns into concrete, and then you just simply die a very painful and slow death. And in my mind, I was kind of, I thought that's what's going to happen to me. The cloud came and it hit us real hard. And about 10 seconds later, I looked at my body. I'm like, I'm not covered in any 2 feet, 3 feet of snow. This is just 2-3 inches of snow on my body. And so in my mind, I was kind of thinking, man, I made it out of the earthquake. I guess I'm going to make it out alive of this avalanche as well. And I was trying to breathe, like I was trying to suck in some air, and just nothing. Ice and snow particles would come in, and I would try sucking in again. And it's as if someone had taken a plastic bag and put over my face, and like was just trying to choke me and kill me. I just simply wasn't able to breathe, and initially I thought I was panicking, but then I kind of just calmed down and I tried breathing really hard, but just I couldn't suck in any air. The German climber next to me, Jost Kabush, he kind of saw all my struggle and he said, "Kuntal, you can come inside my jacket and breathe." And so I quickly went inside his jacket. In that time you're really not thinking anything. I just kind of went inside his jacket and I'm like, and that's it. It was as if I was almost like a newborn baby taking its first breath. It was like I was reborn in that moment. And for the next 2.5 minutes, as that avalanche cloud passed over us, I kept going inside Jost's jacket and I kept breathing in. I remember Jost was also breathing inside the jacket, and from the other side, Taro was also inside his jacket and breathing. And as soon as the avalanche kind of stopped and I was still alive, in that moment I knew that I was reborn, that this was my second chance, and for the rest of my life I was going to be indebted to Jost for having the presence of mind to not only save his own life but to also save my life and to save Taro's life. At this point, all I could think of is my team safe? Are all my Sherpa guides, my cooks, all my porters, are all of them safe? I was the expedition leader of the team and everyone was safe. We did a head count. While every human, we didn't lose any human life, but our entire base camp was completely devastated. What we did is we got some hot water bottles and we quickly went to the medical tent. Because look, we are not trained rescuers, but at the least we could do is give them with some medical supplies and with some hot water, because we still had a kitchen tent that was standing and there were some pieces that were still working. So as soon as we got to the medical tent of the base camp, it was almost like a war zone. The base camp itself was completely devastated, and I remember people's dead bodies being brought in. Someone, who had probably broken their bones walking in. Someone who had, an injury on their face walking in, and it was a very tough situation. We quickly learned that about 19 to 20 people had died at the base camp, and almost about 60 to 70 people were really badly injured at the base camp. I also remember hearing later on in that evening that a campsite which was just about 50 feet to the right of us, there were probably almost 5 people who died in that campsite, and just the mere distance of 50 feet separating me staying alive or me dying a gruesome death. And I truly am grateful in some sense to be alive and sitting here and sharing my story with you folks. But 10,000 people across the Nepal were not so fortunate. More than 500,000 people were homeless. It was a 7.9 magnitude earthquake, the largest to hit Nepal in a century that we were in middle of. And that earthquake is also what induced the avalanche that swept through the Everest base camp, causing devastation, killing 20 people and injuring more than 70 people. At that point, me and my Sherpa, we were very clear in our mind that climbing a mountain is not even on our priority, not even the priority number 10. The priority is to stay safe, is for all my Sherpa guides, all my staff members to go back to their family because their family needs them. And it was just smarter to get back home and, kind of contribute towards helping rebuild Nepal rather than climbing this mountain. I mean, I was willing to wait that one inconsequential year and come back again and make my attempt on Everest. But I also remember that evening we were sleeping the night at the base camp, and I was still scared that an avalanche could probably come by and kill us in the sleep, and none of us wanted to die in our sleeps, frankly speaking. And so we were all kind of taking turns by turns in terms of someone's going to be staying awake for a couple of hours, the next one for a couple of hours, the next one for a couple of hours. I remember when it was my turn to kind of stay awake, again just one big emotion, an emotion of intense gratitude towards towards all my teammates, to all the amazing doctors at the base camp, to all the amazing people at the base camp who took care of each other, but above all, a big gratitude to the amazing Sherpa people who, in my mind, are the true heroes and the stars of the Himalayan climbing scene, but also because they made a superhuman effort to save every last life that could have been saved in that devastation, and do whatever it takes to take care of us. And so big gratitude that I kind of expressed in my mind towards them. And then as I was sitting, kind of my entire life played back in front of me, and I also realized that every moment that I'm going to be alive from now on is just bonus, is a second life that I have, and that if I have any dreams or passions, the best time to achieve those or pursue those is not tomorrow, is not the day after, is not 60 years later when I had all my retirement money saved, but that moment is actually now. And that is probably one of the biggest takeaways that I have had in my life, and one of the biggest learnings from the mountains.